Hey everybody, this is Herschel Furman from High School Top 200. This review of Waimea Combined is brought to you by Fineline Barbers, and what my boy Vinnie from Fineline Barbers is doing is that he's putting together a Aotearoa barber competition, which is going to take place in September 2017, and he's joined up with a major barbering supplier here in New Zealand. So they're going to do this, and they're going to be able to find out who the best barbers in the country are. They are going to put this on, and they're going to have a lot of people from the industry and a lot of companies from the industry showing up, and also they would be able to go out and then sell and also meet with other barber companies from around, barber shops and companies from around New Zealand, and be able to get this network going, and actually to show us as a public how much talent we got and how much the barbering industry, how big it is. They're going to be setting up a Facebook page and an Instagram page so that barbers can actually put up their work, and so that we as a public can be able to see the talent that we have out there, and also get our haircuts from our favorite barbers from around the country. So keep that in mind. The Aotearoa Barber Competition is September 2017, put on by Vinnie from Fineline Barbers. This Waimea Combined, I thought was a pretty good, not a pretty good concept. It is a good concept. It's such a good thing that they have put together, because what this does is that this allows those good players who are at other schools around that area to come together and be able to be a part of a bigger program, and so that they can have the same advantages as other players at bigger schools would have. For instance, and for example, and this is the best example, is that Eden Beach, who was at Motueka High School, actually made the under-18s Crusaders. Now, I don't think Eden would have made it if he hadn't gone and joined up with the Waimea Combined team. And it's not that he wasn't good, it's more the fact that selectors and coaches would have been able to see him against the best throughout the whole year and be able to put him into a category and say, okay, he went from this prop to this prop to this prop to this prop, and said he dominated each time he came against the props, and he had a good game, and he stood up and did his thing and whatever. And then that's how I feel, that's how I know that this concept is good, because it gets those players from these smaller schools into bigger programs, playing against better teams, and gives them a better shot at actually making rep sides. I mean, that got him into a conversation of like, okay, can Eden go up there and then handle the other bigger boys in the other regions and the other props, and does that put him in a national conversation? Because that's what's important, I think, is that getting the best players that we have in New Zealand, getting them some light. And he was the one that was part of that. The other one that I thought was part of that was Michael Stringer, was the other player that I thought got a lot of attention, because he was part of this team as well. Also, Matthew Stephenson is another guy who I thought had a really good year this year, and even at sevens he did really good too. And Jeremy Lawton, who is part of Waimea anyway, he actually had a better team around him to lead around the park, and I thought that was really good, because it was able to give him as their captain and as the one that guides them around. It gave him the opportunity to lead a strong team against other teams. Like, you think about it, these guys in their first week went to I think they went down to St. Thomas, and they beat St. Thomas down there 23-10. Cool, that was great. Then they came back with a really good build of confidence, and then they went out there and they beat Marlborough Boys 42-19. Now that's not like an easy game. That's a really hard game. Even for them, that's a really hard game. Nationally, that's a really hard game. But at the same time, they scored 42 points and held Waimea and held Marlborough to 19 points. 19 points is pretty good. That's a pretty good score. They dropped some games which I don't think they should have. and I think they played because I think the reality set in when they played Christchurch boys, and then the 39-8 was a. I can't say it was a reality check. I think it was more of a. Okay, somewhat of a reality check. Not that they're a small school and they can't compete, but it was a reality check in the same way that you're just like, okay, now we're in a bigger competition. We have to play good every single week, and we don't have to. We can't really afford to have rests. Because I personally see Waimea as sort of the middle of the pack team where they can compete with the big teams, and they're also vulnerable at the same time to losing to the smaller teams. They lost to St. Bede's 10-12, which I don't think they should have lost. I actually think they should have won it. Now that's just being 4 weeks in and saying we're in this competition, we should be able to compete with these bigger teams. Why? Because we beat Marlborough boys. That should be a good indication that you belong. So you get a hiding from Christchurch boys, but then you come against St. Bede's. Now I think, personally, this is what I think, is that they were intimidated more not by St. Bede's as that team that was standing on the field, but the tradition of what St. Bede's was. Now that's just a reality thing that smaller teams coming into bigger competitions have to realize is it's like you're on the same field, you play with the same ball, you got the same refs and the same touchies. Now let's just go out and play our game. Forget what this tradition is. That's what a smaller guy mentality has to think about, is that let's forget about that because we're all on the same field at the same time. All that past all those accolades and all those tournaments that they've won, that's past stuff. That's ages ago. That's not on the field on that day. So you have to take the team for what they are on that field, not what this team means nationally and on a historical platform. So that's what I think happened to Waimea against St. Bede's, was that, because I think that they were a stronger team than St. Bede's. I really do, and that game they shouldn't have let go. They tripped up against a little bit against Ashburton because they won 27-21, where I think that should have been, they should have defended a bit better, maybe giving them 10 points, 12, something like that, but not 21, and they should have made it, maybe have added on another try or something, because they dropped 50 points on Ron Kelly, and then that is a good indication of where Ashburton and Ron Kelly are sort of on that same kind of scale. And that's where I say that Waimea is at that point where they're middle of the range, where they can beat the better teams as well as they are vulnerable to losing to the lesser teams. They beat Burnside, which I think they should have. They lost to Timaru, which I think that was one of those toss-up games. Nelson, they did okay against. I thought that was a pretty good game against Nelson, even Shirley. Being real competitive, which is something that you really want, especially on this first year. They beat St. Andrews, which was good. They lost to Marlborough boys on that turnaround of the second game. And they let Marlborough score the same kind of points, but then they dropped. They didn't even score a point, which is hard for me to understand. It's good for Marlborough, but it's not. It's a good indication for Marlborough, but it's not for Waimea. So they got to start sorting those things out. Then they go and play Lincoln, and they make this a close game. Like I said, they are that middle team that can beat the bigger teams, but at the same time are vulnerable to being beat by a lesser team like Lincoln. They have to, like, if they get this program together, they have to get out of that mentality, because they're going to have to say, we're taking the best from 5 teams. And I know this isn't like 5 teams like, Christchurch, Shirley, St. Bede's, or like that. It's not that. These are country schools as well as sort of one main school. But getting a team like that, you have a top-rated team. Now, like, you look at it, they had a close game, 7 points, 19-12 over Lincoln. Then they play Rangiora, who's basically on the same level as Lincoln, and then they run up the score 52-12. See, that's what I'm saying about they are vulnerable on both sort of ends. Waimea combined are going to be a good team. I think that because they have some boys returning back who are going to be really sharp guys who have had a year in it and they've tasted it. They've been able to enjoy the winnings and the losings and stuff, but they're going to be a good team. That's my review for them, and yeah, wait for the next one. Peace.